So welcome back to another video. Now recently we posted a mini on the channel warning you that you're about to pay more for your gas boiler. It's called the Clean Heat Market Mechanism, or the CHMM. Now this is a government initiative, and what it's designed to do is to increase the take-up of clean heating systems for domestic properties. Now there's obviously lots of measures already in place to do this. You've got the BUZZ scheme, the boiler upgrade scheme. This is a grant, £7,500 that you get for free if you have an air source heat pump fitted in your home and you remove a gas boiler, an oil boiler or an LPG boiler. But that scheme's not really took off how the government would like. By now they are way behind on target, and that target starts to really ramp up into 2027, 2028, 2029 and then 2030. They're expecting 600,000 people a year to be having heat pumps. Well, if we look where we are today, that's about 3% of the market. Well, on the current ramp rate, it's going to take about 100 years. So we need to do something to increase take-up. The government has said, look, we can't put any more money in. What we can do, let's turn to the manufacturers, because the manufacturers are producing the products and maybe they'll incentivize installers, they'll do more brand awareness, and if they don't do it, we're going to fine them. Now, cynics would say maybe they realize this is so unrealistic that now we have a great opportunity to tax boiler manufacturers who are commercial entities. And what are they going to do? Pass it on to you. So how does this scheme work? Well, previously this was launched in 2024 under the Tory government, and it was a total disaster. In fact, it was actually embarrassing for the government and for the boiler manufacturers. So embarrassing that after 3 months they canned the whole thing. And then there was claims from advocates like Martin Lewis saying, have you paid a clean heat market mechanism tax? Well, if you did, get it back, because the government realised what a terrible idea it was. They've apologised and you really should get your money back. Now, this was really difficult to do because it was never an itemised cost on a line. It was hidden under a price rise. Some merchants dealt with it, some manufacturers dealt with it. Now, Labour have said, look, we can't do that. It was embarrassing, it was a disaster. We need to rethink the scheme. They've parked it, they've been thinking about it, and they've relaunched it basically the same as the Tories did. So, be prepared for a disaster. Now, if you're a boiler manufacturer that produces more than 20,000 boilers per year, then under the new scheme rules, you need to produce 6% of your total units as clean heat products, air source heat pumps. Now, where this is a real issue is on two fronts. One of them is renewable uptake right now, 2025 in the UK, about 3%. So if you're a manufacturer producing more than 25,000 boilers, you are going to incur these fines. The second issue is that all of the great UK manufacturers do produce more than 25,000 boilers. All of the Chinese, the foreign, the Turkish manufacturers import less than 20,000. So what this scheme is doing is saying, British business, let's punish you. Importers, bring your cheap products in, stay under a threshold, you've got a competitive advantage on the UK heating industry. So, you're a manufacturer in the UK. How can you have an influence on the market, or what can you do to try and hit these numbers? Well, there are further complications with the scheme. Number one, new builds are excluded. So if you produce boilers or air source heat pumps for new builds, they are out of the mix. Now this is an issue because most new builds have air source heat pumps because that's mandated under planning. But this scheme is designed for the retrofit market. So you then have to start looking at your installer base and say, can we train you up? Can we upskill you to fit these products? And if we can upskill you, can we then market to customers at the same time to help raise awareness for these products? And you could do that because, you know, manufacturers have got a lot of money, they could start to develop marketing schemes, they could do training programs. But what if the consumer demand just isn't there? But let's park that for a second and say consumers are interested, they really want one. Another challenge is cost. So if you're a consumer looking to buy a gas boiler, it'll cost you about £2,500 to swap out your gas boiler. It'll cost you about £800 a year to run. Okay, now if you want an air source heat pump, you're going to spend about £10,000 to £12,000, but you're going to get £7,500 off the government. So that could net out anywhere around £2,500 to £4,000. So about the same cost as changing your boiler. Starts to make sense, no problems at all. It's not cheaper to run, but it's no more expensive to run. And if it's set up really, really well, it could be cheaper. And if you put other renewables on your property, solar systems, battery systems, it can almost be free to heat your home, but that's a lot of investment. We do need to consider consumer mindset, consumer behavior. Your heating system is something you just don't think about, okay? It either works or it doesn't work, and if it's broken, you need to replace it. Now, boilers generally break in winter because that's when they get their most use. To change a gas boiler one day, in and out, it's generally a one-man team. So one guy turns up, he's got his gas safe, he's got all his credentials, we turn up, we change your boiler, you're gonna get a 10-year warranty, and it's gonna be high efficiency. It's gonna cost you the same to run. Same scenario, boiler breaks, it's October, November, whenever it is, we want an air source heat pump. We need to find an air source heat pump business, a technician that can quote a system like this. We need to get a heat loss design done. We need then to apply for the Buzz grant. We need to get permission off the grid to say, can we have an air source heat pump? Because they use a lot of energy and the grid isn't in a great state in the UK. And then we're looking at about a week to have it installed. So unless we're super prepared and we do this in the summer, we have to be prepared to have a week without a heating system. We need to find somewhere for our hot water cylinder, because like 75% of homes in the UK have a combi boiler. We need to find a competent installer, we need to get a heat loss survey done, we need to apply for our grant, we need to find the extra money, and we might need planning permission depending on the unit that we have. Now, whilst this is all a pain in the backside, it's not impossible, it's doable, and if you are a green-driven consumer, you will make it happen, and this Buzz grant does support the cost of going green. But the issue here is for the Joe public, the general man, woman on the street who needs to change their boiler, if they're not prepared for that journey, they don't have the skill set, they don't have the insight, they don't have the time to organise a project like that, then they need to buy a gas boiler. And under this new legislation, they're going to pay more for their new boiler. So how much is this all going to cost? The legislation sets out each fine at £500 per boiler that doesn't meet these ratios. So if a manufacturer doesn't meet that 6%, every boiler above that, or below that rather, is a £500 fine. Now, you're probably, as a consumer, not going to pay £500 because most manufacturers are doing a reasonable number of air source heat pumps. They're just not doing the 6%, especially when new builds have been excluded from this scheme. Now, you are allowed half a point, half a percentage for a hybrid system. This is where you have an air source heat pump and a gas boiler that work together to try and make your system green. But manufacturers generally hovering around 3 to 4% of total production. Now, we've been speaking to some of the key players in the market, your Worcester Bosches, your Valents, your Baxis, your Ideals, and what they're saying is they're expecting these fines to level out around £80. But this is like a fluid system because you don't know as a manufacturer every year how many units you're actually going to sell. What if it changes? What if there's press that ramps up the amount of people, there's advertisements, there's a real mindset. People start saying, I want to be green, I want an air source heat pump. You've charged all these people this tax. Could go the other way. People might say, actually, there's financial issues in my household, there's a cost of living crisis. I'd love to be green, but I can't do it. The take-up drops, the fines increase, and this could get out of hand pretty quickly. And that's before we start to consider the levels, the targets that the government has put in place for the next years, because this scheme ramps. It's aimed to drive manufacturers to push these products or to collect a load of cash, punish householders for not going green, and tax them for it. Now, some consumer advice. What can you do to avoid paying this tax? Well, you've got two options. Go and get yourself an air source heat pump. You'll get a grant off the government for £7,500, but you will have to make up the difference. Or buy a boiler from an imported manufacturer. who isn't having to pay these fines and has a competitive advantage on UK industry. Now, I can already see some of the comments in this video. You're a boiler business, of course you don't like air source heat pumps, you're just trying to put people off. We are a boiler business, but we're also an air source heat pump business. And if you watch the channel regularly, you'll know that we cover a lot of content around renewables. We do a lot of solar systems, we do battery systems, we do EV chargers, and we do care about the environment, but primarily our objective is to make things cheaper for consumers, to save them money, to save them energy. The green element of an install like that is a benefit, but it's generally not a consumer's primary mindset. Don't get me wrong, there are lots of green advocates out there that cost isn't an issue, they just want to be green, but that market is pretty small. You can see that in the air source heat pump numbers. Think about the everyday consumer. This tax is exactly what it is. It is a boiler tax. It's designed to take more money out of your pocket, make you feel guilty about the environment. And the scheme has come in at an unfortunate time. Businesses here in the UK are walking into a whole new tier of national insurance payments, cost of employment, and rising pricing. So this scheme in isolation is £80 to £100. Add on the supply chain, the manufacturers, they all have staff, they all have costs, raw materials are going up, they have annual price increases, they generally do it at the tax year. So £80 to £100 actually ends up at £150 to £200. So what are your thoughts on this scheme? Do you think I'm being negative? Do you think I'm being pro boilers? Do you agree or disagree? Leave a comment below.